Looter shooters have been around for some time now. There's been some high profile launches and some flops in recent years. They provided me with some of the best gaming moments I can remember, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to have a look at the evolution of the looter shooter. First of all, we have to look at the question, what is a looter shooter? So, looter shooters are a hybrid of a shooter and MMO games, with classes, levelling up, grinding and randomised loot. Shooters can be defined as first or third person gun based games. Some notable examples could include GoldenEye, Halo, Gears of War or Doom. MMOs are massively multiplayer online games where you create a character, level them up, gather gear and weapons and work together to bring down huge bosses or explore the game as a team. Grinding describes the repetition of a single activity, albeit with slight variation. And finally, randomised loot is exactly as described. As you progress through a game you get loot, which over time gets more and more powerful, and it's good for hooking players into the gameplay loop and provides incentives for them to come back for more. All of this adds up to great loot and showing off this to your teammates and competitors in PvE, which is player versus environment, or PvP, which is player versus player. The more elaborate the weapons and armour, the harder you've probably grinded to get it, or maybe it was just random luck. Well, how did looter shooters evolve? So back in the 2000s there were a number of great shooters, including Halo, Call of Duty and Gears of War. Standard model of these games was a story mode with online PvP. However, as online elements became more available in games, this opened up the genre to more player versus environment options. Teams and clans could team up in larger numbers and take on enemies together rather than against each other. Infrastructure, internet speeds and servers improved, allowing for more complex battles in greater numbers. World of Warcraft was a worldwide phenomenon at the time and had evolved gameplay including character classes, open world exploration, skill trees and loot. Game developers that were playing those MMOs as kids and teens started developing games themselves and started to combine elements of both shooters and MMOs into the player experience. Together with games like Diablo 2 and Path of Exile, which introduced random weapons, armour and chasing numbers, all the elements were there to be put together. So let's have a look at some of the notable games in the looter shooter genre. First of all, we're going all the way back to 2007 with Tabula Rasa. And Tabula Rasa is an MMORPG developed by Destination Games. It was released on November 2nd, 2007 and tells the story of humanity's last stand against an alien race called the Bane. The story takes place in the near future on two planets, Ariake and Forius. The gameplay mixed some aspects from shooters and also RPG elements. There were missions, story, character creation and a dynamic battlefield and PvP, and the game was supposed to be a World of Warcraft killer. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for the game, but it did lay the foundations for things to come. Next up is also in 2007 and this is Hellgate London. So Hellgate London is a dark fantasy action RPG developed by Flagship Studios, originally released on October 31st, 2007. It was developed by former Blizzard employees who had previously worked on Diablo. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic London in 2038 and it's a fast hack and slash game. There's random elements such as weapons and armour, loot drops and random enemy spawns. The game had a single player and online multiplayer features, however over time the multiplayer features have been shut down in the US and Europe. The single player game features a 5-act story, unlocking a new hard mode on completion. The developer T3 Entertainment and publisher Hambitsoft bought the game from Flagship Studios in 2010 and relaunched it in 2011. It relaunched again in 2014 with a Tokyo expansion and it launched Hellgate Tokyo back from the dead version in November 2018. Next up, it's back to 2009 and this is Borderlands. So Borderlands is a sci-fi first-person shooter with RPG elements created by Gearbox Software and was originally released on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PC and Mac. The game was revealed in 2007 and released in October 2009. So Borderlands features 4-player drop-in, drop-out co-op online multiplayer as well as a single-player story mode. The main gameplay revolves around the first-person shooting elements and players have an access to a wealth of weapons and enemies to fight. Players have also got access to customisable vehicles to add to the action. Players play through a ton of missions with 127 in total, 47 main missions and 80 side quests. Each mission had its own reward such as a weapon, item or revealing a new piece of the story. Random elements were introduced to the game including a gun generator similar to Diablo's random item system. This new system generated over 17 million weapons. Wow, that is a huge number. The system randomises the guns by changing all kinds of attributes, including the barrel, the bullets, the scopes, the materials, and the elemental damage. There's 4 character classes, each with skills, abilities, and their own story. As the characters level up, they gain experience points, including health and accuracy. Each character also has 3 skill trees to work on, and the classes include Berserker, Siren, Hunter, and Soldier. Borderlands 2 released in 2012 and Borderlands 3 released in September 2019. Next up is Warframe, and this was released in 2013. So Warframe is a free-to-play third-person shooter RPG developed by Digital Extremes. Originally released in March 2013 on PC and was later ported to PlayStation 4, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. Players take on members of the Tenno, a race of ancient warriors who've woken from centuries of cryosleep to find themselves at war with different factions. The Tenno wear warframes like exosuits and combine weapons and abilities to take on their enemies. Many of the game's levels are procedurally generated, however with recent updates they've included an open world area to explore and take on opponents. Some story missions are self-contained and they don't use that procedural generation. Missions can be played alone or with up to 4 players in a player versus environment co-op way. Each mission is given a ranking indicating how hard the mission is. As players complete missions, experience is gained and you can level up your warframe through better weapons and mods. Mods can be slotted into your warframe to change the attributes through bonuses and abilities. The standout feature of Warframe is that it's free to play. It's also managed to avoid many of the pay-to-win elements seen in other games, as everything can be acquired through gameplay. You can choose to buy these items if you want immediately, however, loot isn't behind a paywall and is obtainable if you want to grind for it. Initial reviews were mixed or average at best, however, over the years the community has grown and Digital Extremes have added some great content. Now is a great time to jump into the game as it's got great depth and fantastic gameplay loops. So next up, it's the big one for me, and it's Destiny back in 2014. So Destiny is a first-person shared world shooter from Bungie, the same studio that brought us the Halo series. Having perfected that and then sold that IP to Microsoft, Bungie went on a journey to create their new big thing. So Destiny is the story of Guardians, the protectors of Earth, wielding a great power called the Light. The game is set in our solar system and it's full of alien races such as the Vex, Fallen, Cabal and Hive. Guardians can be one of 3 classes. You've got Titans, Hunters and Warlocks. Titans are the tanks of the group, Hunters are sleek and fast, whereas Warlocks, well, they're the space wizards. Destiny's got a number of open shared world areas where players can team up and take on different enemy races on different planets. You've got Earth, Mars, Venus, Mercury, the Moon, they're all playable spaces. The gameplay in the game is split between PvP and PvE. Traditional PvP owes much to Halo and is a quick action style of play. PvE comes in a number of forms, from strikes, where teams of up to 3 can take on a mission, public events and take place at random in the shared world, and then there's raids for up to 6 players. Raids are seen as one of the pinnacles of the challenge in Destiny, often taking teams hours to complete the first time. Destiny's had a number of DLC expansions including The Dark Below in December 2014, Taken King in September 2015 and The Rise of Iron in September 2016. The Taken King was seen as a huge shake-up and one of the most successful expansion paths in Destiny's history. This introduced the Taken, a new enemy race, and a fantastic new raid featuring Oryx, the Taken King himself and father of Crota. Destiny 2 released in September 2017, initially to much fanfare, and then was critically panned for being too shallow, and many of the elements that made Destiny great were stripped out, catering to the more casual player. This led to a backlash from the hardcore community, leading to many of the original elements being put back into the game in September 2018 for the Forsaken update. Destiny features the great gunplay that Bungie is known for, however it also features some of the richest lore in video games, leading to many YouTubers and streamers dedicating their working lives chronicling the journey of Destiny the game. And if you want to get up to speed on Destiny lore, check out My Name is Bife. Destiny is my personal favourite looter shooter and I've probably sunk about 900 hours into the game to date. So next up we've got The Division, and this was 2016. So The Division is an action role-playing game from Massive Entertainment, originally released in 2016 by Ubisoft. It takes place in the near future in New York after a virus has been released to the public. The player takes control of the Division agent tasked with helping to take back and rebuild Manhattan. The Division is a third-person cover shooter in contrast to other games in the looter-shooter genre. Initially, the reviews for the game were generally positive, however it faced issues in the endgame with a lack of content. Players they could play through story missions as well as PvP-focused dark zones where players can team up to take on roaming packs of opponents. Much like other entries in this series, players can level up their character collecting weapons and armour to upgrade their agent. And the developers continued to work and listen to their community and released a huge 1.8 update to the game which is widely seen as a fix. The Division 2 was released on March 9, 2019 to great reviews, and many saw this as the new bar others have to aim for in the looter shooter genre. Although, as the months went on, the player base dwindled for Division 2, and they've recently released an expansion where players go back to New York. Well, next up we've got Anthem, and now we're at 2019, and Anthem is BioWare's effort and the latest new IP in the looter shooter genre. So BioWare, they've got legendary status among players with games like Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, Mass Effect and Dragon Age. So Anthem is a third-person shooter with RPG elements. You can take control of your freelancer in a fully customisable exosuit called a Javelin. Each suit can be personalised to have unique weapons and superhuman abilities. Flying is one of the unique selling points of Anthem, and you can take to the skies through ravines, waterfalls and also underwater. Weapons in Anthem range from pistols, scout rifles, automatic weapons, shotguns and snipers. Combined with the weapons, each Javelin has a number of abilities including rockets, grenades, shield and elemental attacks. Javelins have ultimate abilities allowing them to attack and destroy groups of enemies and deal major damage to bosses. The central hub for the players in the game is called Fort Tarsis, and this is where you meet other NPCs, customise your Javelin through the Forge and you can pick up quests. There's daily, weekly and monthly contracts to pick up as a freelancer. Anthem received a huge marketing push in the build-up to release, but it has since fallen foul of many of the trappings of the genre. The game was seen to be shallow at launch with not much content in the endgame, the story ends abruptly and critically didn't go down well at all. BioWare, they've promised to continue working on the game, but it remains to be seen if they're going to be able to turn this one around. So there's a few games in the looter shooter genre, but now let's have a look at the good and the bad. But first of all, let's have a look at the good. So looter shooters, they provided me with some of the best gaming moments I can remember. Some examples I can think of are the first time I went through the Vault of Glass with a random team, or taking down Oryx, or when Icebreaker and Galahorn or Vex Mythoclast dropped for me. Through these games I've met friends, been introduced to new communities and even discovered Twitch through streamers like Professor Broman and T-Rex. Luke Smith of Bungie jokingly said the true endgame was the friend game, although this was said in a defence of shallow Destiny 2 launch, it's actually true. Many confess to meeting some of their best friends online through looter shooters. The storytelling and the rich lore behind games like Destiny and Warframe are legendary, with hundreds of lore videos created on YouTube, with millions of subscribers on Twitter, Twitch and other social platforms. So shout out to My Name is Bife and Wyland Games. The games are often always online, meaning an ever-changing landscape, other players popping in and out and games leading to random moments with new possibilities. Games that used to be on a linear path. You do X and Y and Z, complete the objective and then move on to a boss. So these games, they're more open, they're less linear, and they provide a foundation for great stories and for the player to forge their own path. So now we've got the not so good. So these games, they're plagued with development problems. Notable games in this category include Destiny and the more recent Anthem, with turbulent development cycles. The development of Destiny has been documented by Jason Schreier, who's featured in his book Blood, Sweat and Pixels. A similar story has been told of Anthem, again by Jason Schreier, which tells the tale of a game coming together in the last 16 months of development, together with a whole bunch of stress and anguish at BioWare. The Division 2 was released with much hype and it failed to live up to expectation, and Warframe started slow too, although this was free to play. It seems many companies set out on a mission to create a grand vision, and then somewhere along the way that vision is diluted and diluted some more, and eventually releasing a much more basic version than was originally intended. Often months of patches, bug fixing and content drop follow these rocky launches, with some games succeeding and some games fading away into the distance. Together with these tough launches often follows a content drought. The game launches and feels empty and shallow to the audience. New content is eaten up by the audience at an exponential rate, often being completed within days, leading to long content droughts for the hungry audience. These content droughts have led players to leave the game, sometimes for short spells, but this can lead to falling off the game completely. And finally, and maybe most importantly, there's this in-game monetization and loot boxes. So many of the games feature gambling-like features such as loot boxes where you can buy a box that contains a random item with a chance to get what you want. A good example of this was a seasonal event in the original Destiny called Festival of the Lost, nicknamed Festival of the Cost, where you purchase loot boxes for a chance to get a unique ghost. So these systems are still in place in many of the games and do hook people into spending potentially a lot of money in their ecosystem. You could argue that the business model for these live service games has to have these features as they're not releasing major games each year, and the developer is a business and they need to make money to fund their next expansion or new game. However, we do often see a lot of recycled content sold back to us or behind paywalls, and that should probably change. In summary, there's pros and cons to these games. However, my overriding feeling towards looter shooters is definitely positive rather than negative. The friendships I've made, the gaming experiences we've had together, and of course, the loot that has dropped. If you haven't tried looter shooters, then the genre is maturing and there's some great games out there to go and play, including The Division 2, Destiny 2, Warframe and Borderlands 3. There's so much more that could be said about looter shooters. These games, they're big, they've got great depth, and many are live service games. They're being constantly updated and they're living, breathing worlds with deep lore, fascinating characters, and I can't recommend them enough. Well, let me know down in the comments what you think of looter shooters and what is your favourite in the genre. Well, that's it for the evolution of looter shooters, and thank you so much for watching. For more content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. If you want to be notified the next time I upload, then hit that bell button too. To join the community, check out the Discord link in the description, or you can follow me on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out these other videos on the channel. Thanks again, I'll see you soon.